What we have here is the BMW F55. This is really our 4K workhorse, the camera that's been out everywhere shooting episodic television, which shows such as The Big Bang Theory, The Blacklist. So what we see here is a configuration with a Fujinon Cabrio in front. So it's equipped so that it would be portable, easy to operate, an easy transition to a film-style production from video operators. We also have a RAW recorder at the back. And what we're showing here is the newest firmware version 4.2, which has additional bells and whistles. As you know, we've been releasing tons of firmware on this camera. It is a camera that does 4K on board, HD, it even does proxy recording with an external adapter, it does HD Cam SR, it does ProRes and DNX HD, which will come out soon as an option. So really a camera that's going to bring you in the production industry for many, many, many years, which will carry you for many years without having to look into future products.
So my name's Alistair Chapman, and I'm a blogger and a DOP. I'm known for writing about cinema, TV technology, but also as a working cameraman. I've done all kinds of major projects over 25 years of working in television. Some of the highlights of those have been working for National Geographic, my own production company, commissioned to produce programs for them, one in particular called Twister Tours, that was one of their best-selling shows when we made that, about storm chasing, actually about a couple that for their 50th wedding anniversary went storm chasing. It was a really bizarre story. More sort of recently, I shoot a lot of very high-end stock footage that's used in all kinds of productions, used by museums, documentaries, but also in feature films. And movies like The Day After Tomorrow, I have footage in films like that. So quality is paramount, and I really, really need to shoot stuff that's not just good, but the best. BBC Natural History Unit now, all their high-end productions are being shot in 4K, so they won't take HD anymore. So I needed to get on the 4K gravy train as quickly as I could. And that was very expensive, but then when the Sony F5 came out, it was an affordable option that I could afford to actually buy myself. So I bought an F5 with an R5 RAW recorder, and for 3 years now I've been shooting almost everything in 4K RAW. And the quality is incredible. It's just amazing what you can do with that 4K image from the F5. I also use the 55 for commercials. I shoot TV commercials, and there'll be some applications where the F55 is the camera that we need because of its global shutter, which is a unique feature in these large sensor cameras. So they're really great, and they've really enabled me to dramatically improve the quality of the images that I'm delivering to my customers. The F5 and F55, they're both very similar to look at externally. The difference actually is the 55, which this has a silver ring here, and the 5 has a black ring. So from the outside, that's all the difference is. Internally, the differences aren't huge. There are some key differences between the two cameras. The F55, the big thing is it has this amazing sensor with what's called frame image scanning, more commonly known as a global shutter. And that means you don't get any jello artifacts, no rolling shutter artifacts, so you can shoot fast action, sports, wildlife without having any image artifacts, and that's really important for a lot of productions. Both of the cameras can shoot in 4K, both can do 4K RAW, and both can shoot at up to 240 frames per second. So that makes it a really versatile camera, competitive. You get a hell of a lot of camera for your money. And it's small, it's compact, it's low power. I travel a lot, so having low power is important. Some of the competitors to the F5 and 55 actually draw close to 100 watts. It's 4 times more power than this. So you need 4 times as many batteries. It's a camera that has constantly evolved and improved during its lifetime. When I bought the camera, the feature set was nowhere near as big as it is now. And it's a feature set that's getting better and better and better. There are still more firmware updates coming for these cameras that are going to make them even better. Now, recently, Sony did introduce a new camera, the FS7, PXW FS7, that's very closely related to the F5 and 55. They share a lot of the same functionality and a lot of the same capabilities. Image quality is very similar. And PXW FS7, the price point on that camera is unbelievable. In terms of value for money, it is ridiculous. In fact, I actually own one of each now. I do have more than one camera, so I have an FS7 and an F5. But they're quite different cameras to use. So for run and gun, where you're working very quickly, the FS7 has some advantages because it has autofocus, you have auto exposure and things like that, tools that make working very quickly very, very good. But then when you're doing digital cinematography and filmmaking, and you're using things like lookup tables and things like that, where your camera setup gets a little bit more complicated, the F5 and F55 have some major benefits because you have this display panel on the side of the camera that tells you how the camera is set up. So at a glance, I can see precisely how this camera is set up, exactly what it's doing, and that makes your workflow very fast.
I'm Brett Van Dyke, and I was nominated for King Tut Unmasked and Best Docudrama. We originally wanted to shoot a Mira, area Mira, but the Mira was not available. It was only going to be available 2 months after that, so we went with Sony F55, mainly because of the high frame rate. We were wanting to shoot a lot of 200 frames, really high-speed photography, so that was a workhorse that we could still throw the Cabrio lenses on the shoulder, BNG, and still shoot with beautiful Cook primes as well. So it had the versatility of both, being a dock camera and, you know, a full frame 35mm sensor camera. We shot 4K, 200 frames, and then still did all the documentary part that we needed to with the, you know, Cabrio zoom lenses on the 55.
What I have here is the PXW FS7, probably the hottest product on the show right now. Our new 4K camera at less than $10,000.
One of the nice things about the F5 and F55, and also actually the FS7, is we can change that lens mount on the camera. So we're not tied to the PL mount with the F5 and 55 or the E mount with the FS7. We can put different adapters on both of these cameras to change the lenses that we're using. And in terms of which lenses do you use, well, you have a huge range of choices. You have your classic cinema lenses from companies like Cook and Zeiss and Sony as well. If you're doing a drama, something romantic, you might look at Cook lenses because they're a little bit soft and they have a very warm look to them, which is really pleasing for romantic drama. But if you were doing an action film or something like that, you want something that's a bit sharper and a bit crisper. And actually, one of the lens blinds that's not very well known is the Sony PL mount lenses, and they're really superb. They're very, very sharp, have minimal aberrations, and have no false color. So they give you a very neutral image. And that's really good for a modern workflow where you're going to create your look in post-production. So you want to shoot something that's very neutral because you'll create your look in post. And the FS7 is a really great camera for post-production heavy workflow if you want. Although it's aimed at run and gun shooting, it also has this full cinema mode in it called Cine EI, where you can treat it like a film camera. And you can actually rate the camera at different ISOs depending on what you're shooting. So that gives you big flexibility. It allows you to get lower noise in your pictures, which is always very good for grading, and really allows you to extract a great image from what is a really low-cost camera. I was at IBC when they introduced the FS7, and I had a pretty good idea that it was going to be a relatively low-cost camera, but when they announced the price, I was absolutely stunned, because to get the feature set that's in this camera today, really you need to spend 3 to 4 times what this camera costs. It's really incredibly cheap. You are still getting that full cinema workflow. You are getting a full ENG workflow if that's what you want. You have the ability to put almost any lens on this camera, and very few cameras have that ability actually, without having tools to actually physically take the camera apart and change the lens mount. You can also shoot log on this camera, so that gives you 14 stops of dynamic range, so it copes really well with challenging lighting situations. You have lookup tables built in, so that when you're shooting with log, the director, the producer, the other people on the set can see an image that looks like what it's going to look like when it's graded. You also have the ability to take a RAW output from the camera, so you can record in RAW. And when you record in RAW, effectively you're taking the image direct from the sensor to your computer, so it minimizes compression artifacts. You can do things like changing your white balance in post-production really easy, and there's an incredible amount of information in the highlights that isn't normally in there with conventional video recording. And there really is no other camera that's anywhere like this in the market right now, and at the price point that you're paying for it, it's stunning. I mean, one more thing to add is the lens. They do a kit lens for it, a 28 to 135 millimeter lens. Now that lens, again, the price is absolutely amazing because it's about 1/10 of the price of a comparable cinema lens. It's a servo zoom, so you have a zoom rocker, you can zoom in and out with power zoom, it has autofocus, 28 to 135 millimeter. The nearest competitor lens that's in the market, is a half focal, so there's no focus shift. As you zoom in and out, is going to cost you $40,000. Whereas the 28 to 135, it's in the sort of $2,500–3,000 range. It's a really amazing lens for the money.